So Dr. Robert Sungenis is the founder and president of Catholic Apologetics International, a lay apostolate dedicated to serving the Church by defending her teachings. He holds advanced degrees in theology and religious studies from George Washington University, Westminster Theological Seminary, and Calamus International University. His January 2008 article, The Old Covenant, Revoked or Not Revoked, led the U.S. bishops to excise an error about the Mosaic Covenant from the 2006 United States Catholic Catechism for Adults, which was approved by the Vatican in 2009. Robert is the chairman of Stellar Motion Pictures, LLC, in West Hollywood, California, which produces movies for scientific and religious audiences. He is the executive producer of the movie The Principle, which appeared on AMC and Regal Cinemas in October 2014. Robert is also the executive producer, writer, and director of the movie Journey to the Center of the Universe, which was released on DVD in September 2015. Robert has worked closely with the Colby Center since its founding in the Jubilee year of 2000. He is the author of the DVD series, How the World Was Made in 6 Days, 1 and 2 of which have been produced by the Colby Center during the last 3 years. So please welcome Dr. Sungenis, and I've seen the two DVDs that he's made, and they're really very good. I highly recommend them. And I'll be entertaining for
Okay, so thank you for all coming, and I'm glad to be here to teach you a little bit about geocentrism. Does anybody here have any education, experience, reading about geocentrism? Familiar with it at all? Can you raise your hand so I can see it? Okay, that's pretty good. Pretty good. Were they from my books or someone else? You don't have to answer. Hildegard, okay. He beats me.
Solange.
800 years. Who?
Solange.
Solange, yes. Wish she could still be with us. She was adamant. And Paula Hay.
Yeah.
Hey, you too. Okay, so I think I'm getting a little ringing here. I hope it's not going to bother us. And I just need to know from whoever's in charge here when my talk ends. It is now 1:20, and when do I have to go to? When does it end?
2:10.
2:10. Okay, thank you. Okay, so is it me, or can that be turned down? Anybody know?
Our friends are trying to adjust it.
Okay. Yeah, you can turn it down a little bit. Okay, so let me start with a YouTube debate that I saw just recently, about a week ago, between Dinesh D'Souza, and I'm sure everybody knows who he is. He's made some movies himself, and he's an Indian. I think he converted to Christianity. I think that's correct. He's a fall-away Catholic. Interesting. Okay, so he's an evangelical. Yeah, there's a lot of those around. He was having a debate with an atheist. And they were talking about how the world came to be. And the atheist, of course, doesn't consider the Bible an authority or anybody else. He's an atheist. He doesn't believe there's a God that created the universe. So you know where he's coming from. Dinesh D'Souza, on the other hand, is an evangelical who believes that God created the universe. He's not exactly sure how he did it, but that he thinks it's a great thing and thinks that he is so more educated and just better with knowledge and experience with all, as opposed to the atheist who doesn't believe in God at all. But when I watched that debate, I was amazed at what the atheist had to say. And he really took advantage of the inconsistencies in D'Souza's arguments for the existence of God and the creation of the world. And he won the debate, as far as I was concerned. And I'm going to tell you how. So they're arguing back and forth, and D'Souza says, well, we've discovered this thing called the Big Bang. And now we can put a beginning on the creation of the universe, a point in time that we can say there it was, as opposed to the previous belief that it was there for an infinite time, had no beginning, it's going to have no end, it's just there. That's called the steady state theory. And that was the reigning theory in astronomy up until about the 40s, 50s, 60s, probably more toward the early 60s, because then they discovered what they call the cosmic microwave background radiation. Okay? And they said that this radiation was 2.75 Kelvin degrees, and it comes from everywhere in the universe, and they said that that was the remnants of the Big Bang that happened 13 billion years ago. Okay? And D'Souza was rather proud of himself that the atheists didn't really have anything to point to. No beginning, no end, no nothing. And Mr. D'Souza had this 13 billion years ago event that happened that gave us all we see. And the atheist came back and said, well, do you believe the Bible? And D'Souza said, of course I believe the Bible. Where do you think I'm getting this from? Okay? Now you guys laugh because you're educated. Most of Catholicism today would say, D'Souza's wrong, or D'Souza's right, and they have a stake in the game. Okay, but they wouldn't be laughing because they're not educated like you are. You have the privilege of having these gentlemen today come to you and teach you exactly what the Bible says. Not what we would like the Bible to say. You see, because D'Souza would like the Bible to say that there was a Big Bang 13 billion years ago. And that produced all we see. And they try to do that. You know, when God said, let there be light, and there was light. Well, what do you think a Catholic theistic evolutionist is going to do who claims to accept what the Bible says, but also wants to believe what modern science says about the Big Bang? What's he going to say? He's going to say, yeah, well, that light, that's the Big Bang. You ever heard anybody say that? If you don't, stick around, you'll hear it. Okay? So, in other words, he's trying to fit his modern science into the Bible, but it doesn't exactly fit right. You know, if you have a puzzle piece, you try to fit it into the holes, and it looks like it will go in there, but you just keep trying and it just doesn't fit. Well, that's the dilemma that they're in. It looks like it was fit because God said there was light. That was the Big Bang. There was light. I mean, what more could you want? And the atheist comes back and says to him, you believe the Bible, right? Yes. yes. Well, what does the Bible say about how things began? And D'Souza says, well, I don't know. I read it, dozens of times. I mean, what makes a difference? God created the heavens and the earth. And the atheist says, have you really read that closely recently? Well, I don't know. We can get a Bible if you want. Okay, we can look at it. No. I mean, I can go get one for you, too. I can read it. Well, tell me what it says. Well, it says, in the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth, and the earth was without form and void, and darkness was upon the face of the deep. That's verses 1 and 2. Okay? Verse 3 is what? And God said, let there be light. And there was light. Now, I said, the atheist says to Dinesh, he says, well, what do you notice about that? I don't know. God created the heavens and the earth, and it was dark for a while, and there was light. Yeah, but you're missing the most important part. Which is what? It says, the earth was created before the light. Well, what does your Big Bang Theory say? It says the light was created before the earth. So somebody got something wrong, right? Yeah, somebody's not telling it correctly. So as much as, and that's why I say that Dinesh D'Souza lost the debate. Because the atheist said, okay, if you're going to use the Bible, then let's use the Bible. Not halfway, not a quarter of the way, not the way that makes you feel comfortable, but let's take the Bible for what it says. And it says the earth came before the light. So you're not really obeying the Bible, are you? The atheist says to him. And the debate came to an end. Now, who would you say won the debate? Anybody think the atheist won the debate? Yep. Bill Wagner over there. He won the debate. Not because he doesn't believe in God, of course. He's on the wrong track. But he can show the inconsistencies in everybody else's track because he looks exactly at what the Bible says. And that's what we're going to do today, the next 50 or so minutes. Okay? Now, when you've come across people who you use the word geocentrism, you say that probably a little gingerly, don't you, geocentrism, if you are in a conversation about it. Because what is most people's reaction when you bring up something like flat earth is one, yes. What's another one? What? Galileo, okay. I get things like, you're crazy. You're Looney Tunes. You're this, you're that. Haven't you been paying attention, Mr. Sungenis? What's been going on the last, 400 years since Isaac Newton? No, I just forgot all about that stuff. You're right. I need to go back and study. And then I say, no. Yeah, I studied Isaac Newton and Galileo and Einstein and all of them who have anything to say about this subject. I studied them all for the last, 22 years. I've dedicated my life to this. Because when I realized the possibilities 22 years ago that modern science could be wrong on one of its most fundamental issues, and that the church could be right in condemning Galileo for believing in heliocentrism. This was something to me, I said, this could change the world. Because think about what it would do. All of modern science would have to regroup and go back to square one. medicine, paleontology, biology, you name all the ologies would have to re-look at how they view the world and where it all came from. Everything would be affected. Nothing would escape the grip that we got it wrong. Okay? That's how important this subject is. Just think of the foundation that it gives to your children. They can build their whole world on this. That the Bible is right. What came first, the chicken or the egg? We can answer that question. The chicken. What came first, the earth or the universe? The earth. What came first, the earth or the sun? We can answer that. The earth. When does Genesis say that the sun was made? 3 days after the earth was made. When does the Genesis say that the stars were made? 3 days after the earth was made. So here you have the little earth all by itself. And then God adorns it with the stars, comets, everything. Okay? We know that's the truth. And if we could get men to believe that and go back to square one, we could change the world. And if I didn't believe that, I wouldn't be standing up here today talking to you. Because I'm not in this to just gain knowledge. You know? I'm in this to change the world. And maybe someday you will be too. Because once you have it in your heart that this is correct, there's no telling what God can do with you in the future. The other side of that, of course, is just like Noah. When the people of his day were so bad, God said, I'm going to create a flood. And only 8 people of tens of millions were saved. 8. So we know God means business, doesn't he? He just doesn't talk to satisfy his ego. When he says, I'm going to judge the world, he means it. And that's another thing that the world doesn't want to believe. As Hugh had told us in his talk. A flood? A big boat? Animals? 2 by 2? Are you kidding? Nope, not kidding. It's all very feasible. And we've had some brilliant scientists show us how it's feasible. How it could have happened. Right down to the drop of water. Okay? So we have a choice. We either believe it or we don't. And I'm hoping that your stay here today, that you'll walk out of here and you'll say, I believe it. I believe it. God, show me what I can do with it. Okay? Now, let me explain a couple of things for you. We ask, what do people say when you tell them about geocentrism? Let me ask you, a little son there, have you ever gotten any answers from people when you start talking about geocentrism? In the negative? What do they say to you?
They said, you're nuts.
You're nuts!
And I said, you're nuts.
Oh, there you go, see? One of the things you have to have in being a geocentrist is thick skin, and you've got it. So yeah, you're nuts. Why? Well, come on. I mean, let's go back to Isaac Newton. Okay, now I'm going to give you a little physics here. How many people here know a little physics? Okay. A little bit? Okay. All right. So, in Newton's theory, and this will give you sort of a ballpark yet crystallized understanding of what we're dealing with here. Because the subject of geocentrism is very big. That's why when I wrote Galileo Was Wrong, which is over there on the table, it's 3 volumes of 2,200 pages. Okay? And most of it deals with science. Okay, so it's a big topic, but I'm going to try to boil it down for you in one simple example. So you'll be able to say, oh, I get it. Okay? All right, so Isaac Newton. Isaac Newton was a heliocentrist. He hated the Catholic Church. He was an egomaniac. If you read his history, he was not a nice guy. Okay? And he was the first man in history to put an equation on how the celestial bodies moved. Okay? Now, a heliocentrist is somebody who believes what? Helio is the Greek for sun. Centrist is center. So he believes the sun is in the center. And the Earth and all the planets go around the sun. Everybody with me? Okay. We've been taught that since we were what? Nursery school. Okay? I used to have nursery school, maybe kindergarten. But we learned it very young. The other is geocentrism, which is what? Geo stands for Earth. And centrism stands for center, so it's the Earth in the center of the system. And the sun's going around it. Okay? Simple enough, right? Okay. I can tell you this, from the standpoint of modern science today, beginning from Ernst Mach in the late 1880s through Albert Einstein to the present day, every scientist worth his salt will tell you, yeah, I know both are possible. And we don't pick it based on science. We pick it based on philosophical preference. All of them will tell you that. And what do they mean by philosophical preference? What they mean is, if it doesn't fit into my philosophy, that is your geocentrism, then I just choose not to accept that model. Heliocentrism, yeah, I can see that, because you see what that does? It allows time and chance, evolution. It puts the Earth out there, the remote recesses of space, where there's no signpost saying this is the center, blah, blah, blah. That fits into my model. Okay? Now, if I said, do you have any scientific proof for that? No. Now, if he were to answer you honestly, he would say, no, I don't. And that's the irony of this whole discussion. There is no proof for heliocentrism. Because every experiment, every aspect about it, where they think they have proven heliocentrism, somebody comes along and says, well, here's how geocentrism explains it. And as a scientist, they have to accept it. And they have done that. Like if you read the book on the table there, and I wrote it in many copies, Geocentrism 101, 8th edition, I have all their quotes, where they say, oh yeah, geocentrism is possible, yeah. Very scientific, viable, mechanical system. I just don't prefer to believe it. And so we have to ask, well, why? You said philosophical preference, can you go a little deeper? Yeah. You see, I don't believe in God. And if you put the Earth in the center, that smacks a little too much of God. Because I know in my heart of hearts, and they say this in the books, okay, I'm not making this up. I know that if the Earth is in the center, that is absolutely, astronomically impossible to happen by chance. So that means, if it's in the center, somebody with a capital S had to put it there. And that means God exists. And that means, as Jesus said in John 3:19, that they have to account for all their sins. And they don't like that. See, each man knows from the conscience that God has given him what his sins are. He can name them for you. But he doesn't want anybody exposing those sins. And that's why Jesus says they don't come to the light. They love the darkness. Because that way their sins won't be exposed. So if I'm going to give him a scientific, philosophical theory that says the earth is in the center of the universe, what do you think is the first thing he's going to think of? Uh-oh, that means God exists. And I can't hide from God. And he's going to expose all my sins, and I'm going to be judged by him. Yeah, that's going through his head. In a split second. Okay, they know that. So I'd much rather believe in heliocentrism. I'll take my chances. Because I can believe the earth is out there in the remote recesses of space by time and chance. That's easy. Okay? But geocentrism? Oh, baby. Get me as far away from that as possible. Okay, so you can give them all the scientific arguments you want. They're just going to come back and say, yeah, well, heliocentrism is viable too. And that's what I choose. So it gets down to a theological, biblical, philosophical argument. Now you have to know the science, however, in order to get to the theology and the philosophy. You just can't start and say, yeah, well, I'm just going to argue philosophically. Yeah, well, you'll get beat pretty bad. You have to know the science in order to get there. And that's what I'm going to teach you right now. In 15, 25 minutes. So let's go back to this guy, Newton. Newton said the earth goes around the sun, and not the sun around the earth. Why? Well, he said, because the sun has more mass than the earth, about, 1,000,000 times more mass than the earth. That means, in physical science, that if you have those two bodies there, one's the big sun and the other's the small earth, what's going to happen? Or what's going to have to happen in order to stop this little earth from being sucked in by the sun? Because the sun has more gravity, it's going to pull the earth, right? Even though the earth has a little gravity itself, it's still going to be pulled in by the sun. So how do we stop that? We make the earth move. Okay? We make the earth move away from the sun. That's called the revolution of the earth. Okay? Physics also tells us that the earth is not going to automatically go in a curved direction. You know anything that goes in a curved direction unless it's forced to go? Yeah. All the things that move want to move how? Straight line. Okay? That's the essence of Newton's physics. And how do they move in a straight line? What causes them to move in a straight line? You physics guys out there. It's called inertia. Okay? Inertia is, once you make that object move, it's going to want to continue to move. And it's going to take another force to stop it from moving. Okay? It's called inertia. So the earth has inertia. So here's the sun, here's the earth. What's the earth going to want to do? It's going to want to go in a straight line. Okay? As all objects do.
Excuse me, Brother.
Yes, sir.
If you could just put the mic up closer to your mouth.
Oh,
The one
okay.
that's attached there.
Oh,
Because the people watching the live stream cannot hear you properly. So if you put it up higher, you'll have more volume for the live stream. I would go even higher than that. I've been putting it here on my tie.
so I don't have the ties.
Just, I think that'll be the highest you can go on your shirt. That'll probably be much better.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right, so back to Isaac Newton. So here's the sun, here's the earth. The earth wants to move in a straight line if you give it some movement, right? If you put a force on, it's going to move in a straight line. Okay? What's going to make it deviate from a straight line? Gravity of the sun. So you have the inertia making it go straight, you have the sun pulling it this way, and what's the compromise? It's going to go around in a circle. Okay? Make sense? That's the essence of Newtonian physics. It's called the second law. But all three of those laws of Newton can be combined into the second law. We can show you how, but that's not important right now. The second law has an equation. And this is what made Newton famous. Galileo didn't have the equations. He just did things by dropping two balls from the Tower of Pisa or, futzing around with a telescope. But there was no math, except maybe simple arithmetic. Okay? But Newton showed us calculus, which is an advanced form of math. But the simplest of his calculus, if you want to put it that way, was one simple formula, one simple equation. F stands for force. F equals ma. If there's any equation you want to remember for the rest of your life, it's that one. F equals ma. The F is the force, m is the mass, a is the acceleration. So let's put that in the Sun-Earth model that we just created for Newton. The Earth wants to go straight, the Sun pulls it in, it goes around in a circle. Well, how fast does it have to go? Because if it goes too fast, what's going to happen? It's going to go out. It's going to go out. It's going to exceed its circular orbit and go out into space. If it goes too slow, on the other hand, what's going to happen? It's going to go inside, yeah. The orbit's going to deteriorate, and it's going to fall into the sun. Okay? So you have to have the right speed. That speed is about 19 miles per second that the Earth would have to go around the sun. So, that gives you Newtonian physics. And it's a pretty good model. When you think about it, very simple. Everything works. The question is it the true system? Because I have other systems that work just as well. Okay? But this was the answer that everybody was looking for. That's why Isaac Newton became a god to the modern age. Because he beat the Catholic Church. See, there was only one authority before the scientists came along in the Enlightenment period, and that was the Catholic Church. Everything you said, did, thought about had to be passed through the Catholic Church first. And they would approve or disapprove, as they did with Galileo. But then you have the Enlightenment, and you have the Protestant Reformation, and everybody's pulling away from the Catholic Church, and they're no longer the single authority. So you got these scientists going through the universities like Isaac Newton did, and he's independent. He's from England. And you know what happened between England and Rome. If there was ever a split, there was one. And so he was not under the authority of Rome, so he could basically say whatever he wanted. And if he could back it up with an equation, so much the better. Then he had all the scientists listening to him. So, and then you have guys like Immanuel Kant, probably the most famous philosopher of the Enlightenment period, who backed Isaac Newton up, said, this is the guy with the answers, all the scientific answers. So he had it made. Okay, so his little model, when the Earth, wants to go in a straight line, they can't because the sun's pulling it in, and making it go in an orbit. Oh, everybody loved it. Everybody loves scientists, theologians, you name it. Okay? He was basically the start of the scientific revolution, not Galileo. Because if you can the scientists talk to each other today even in equations. They don't talk like you and I talk. I remember I was talking to one scientist, and I had this idea, he goes, well, send me an equation. So, when they meet each other going down the street, they don't say, hi, how you doing? They say, E equals MC squared. All right, so what about the geocentric model? How do we explain that? Okay, so let's put the Earth in the center. Okay? And let's say the whole universe rotates around that center. Is that possible? Is that possible? It is. Why is it possible? Well, even Newton agreed that it would be possible. As a matter of fact, they just found the very last page of his Principia Mathematica, the famous 1687 book that made Newton Newton. And in that page it says, if there was a sufficient force outside the solar system that could balance out the gravity of the sun, then we could have the Earth in the center of the whole system. He says that, and it's in my book. You can read it. I even have the handwriting that Newton wrote it with, which was given to me by a professor at Tufts University a few years ago. And it's invaluable. Okay? So even he admits it. What about a guy like Albert Einstein? You think he would admit it? If there's anybody in this world who did, it's Albert Einstein. As far as the geocentrists are concerned, Albert Einstein is your best friend. Because his theory of general relativity requires the reciprocal of Newton's sun-centered system. They are required by the theory of relativity to put the Earth in the center and make the system work. Why? Because all motion is relative. If all motion is relative, that means you have to have a relative reciprocal to the Earth going around the sun, which is what? The sun going around the Earth. You have to have it. But here's the key. You can't just deal with the solar system. You have to expand the system out to the rest of the universe. When you do that, then you can get the reciprocal that's needed. Okay? So, if a Newtonian came up to us and said, well, obviously, look, the Earth is smaller, the sun's bigger, all the planets, we see them move, they're all going around the sun. Isn't that the obvious answer? Why are you searching for another answer? Now, we've already explained this a little bit, right? About one requires you to believe in God, the other really doesn't, because it can all come by time and chance. We already went through that. Okay? And I would admit to him, I would say, look, if you want to confine the system, the laboratory, to the solar system and nothing else, then you're correct. The Earth must go around the sun. No two ways about it. Okay? So we're giving a little. But we're going to take away a lot. Okay? And remember that. You just stick with the solar system. Newton's answer, Galileo's answer, has to be true. Okay? If you expand the system now to include the rest of the universe, and by the way, how did Newton fix that for himself? Here's what he did. Newton said, the universe is absolute. Absolute. Anybody here who's taken philosophy would know this. Newton said the universe is absolute. What does he mean by that? He means it doesn't move, it doesn't change, it doesn't affect anything else. It's just there. It's absolute. Okay? And what would be the opposite of an absolute universe? Something that moves. Okay? Something that changes. Okay? And I can think of one good one. The universe rotating in 24 hours. Yeah. As long as you allow that now in your physics, it's possible. And that's basically what Einstein said against Newton. He said Newton started out with a premise he couldn't prove, a presumption he could not prove. And that is that the universe is absolute. That space out there is just space, doesn't do anything. It's absolute. And both Mach and Einstein said, you can't do that. You can't presume foundations in physics with equations without proving that it's correct. Okay? So if you can't prove that the universe is absolute, then I'm going to come along and say, hey, instead of the Earth going around the sun, how about we have the whole universe go around the Earth instead? And you know what he would have to say? If he believes in Albert Einstein's physics? Yes, you're correct. Okay? So, we've learned a great deal here. We've learned a great deal here. Science itself has learned a great deal. Because before Newton, nobody was thinking in universal terms about the universe rotating around the Earth. Nobody. Maybe Aristotle played with that idea, but his universe was still limited. Ours is pretty big. We've got those big telescopes out there in California that can see way, way out there. And the one that's the newest one is the James Webb telescope. Why is that so important to us? Well, first of all, it's an infrared telescope. That means they can see a lot farther than the Hubble telescope. And when it's viewing all the way out to the edge of the known universe, what does it see? It sees galaxies that are perfectly formed. It shouldn't be that way. If you believe in the Big Bang Theory, you believe those first galaxies were created probably, 400 billion years after the initial Big Bang? And they should be infantile galaxies, just a bunch of gas with no form. You see? And they stayed that way, and then they went out to the edge of the universe. But that's not what we see. None of them are immature galaxies. They're all mature galaxies. As if what? As if somebody said, let there be galaxies, and there were galaxies. Like Genesis says. Because they're all mature. Okay, so we've discovered a lot. And what does this James Webb telescope also tell us about the universe? It's pretty darn big. Pretty darn big. Okay, so it's not Aristotle's universe. And if it's big, then what has to happen? Well, here's what has to happen. If you're God, and you create the universe, and it's this big sphere, okay? And it's rotating east to west. In physics, what do you have to do to get it started? Rotating. All you got to do is flick your thumb, and that thing will start moving as a figure of speech. In other words, God has to give the initial push. And once he does, then what's going to happen? Is it going to slow down? Is it going to speed up? No, it's going to go at the same speed. Same speed as the speed you gave it when you initially pushed it. Okay? And why does it have to do that? Because it has to preserve its angular momentum. That's the law of physics. So in other words, that's all it takes. One initial push, and that universe will spin around its center of mass, which is where the Earth is, ad infinitum. It'll just keep on going, because there's nothing out there to stop it. Okay? Now, we'll use that against the heliocentrist who says, he likes his model better. Because he likes the Earth to rotate, and he likes it to go around the sun. Because that fits into his time and chance philosophy. Okay, but let's put the Earth in the center and have it rotate instead of having the universe rotate around the Earth. What's going to happen? Well, there's these certain things, certain forces that happen in the Earth, like earthquakes, volcanoes, tsunamis, tidal shifts, moon gravity, sun gravity, you name it. There's about 24 different forces out there, and I don't know what's happening to my mic here. Nothing I can do about it. Maybe the battery went bad. I'll turn it on and off. There we go. Okay, so in each of those things, earthquakes, volcanoes, tsunamis, tidal shifts, whatever it is, they all have this thing called inertia. And they would all tend to stop the Earth from rotating. Every time there's a volcano, every time there's an earthquake, the Earth slows down. And you know how many earthquakes there are per year? 1 million. Not all of them are big, of course. But they should all be working to stop the Earth from rotating, or at least slowing it down. Even evolutionists believe that. They say the Earth rotated once a day in 10 hours, many billions of years ago. So they don't have any problem with this concept, that inertia is going to slow down the Earth's rotation if it is indeed rotating. Okay? So we've had enough earthquakes and inertial forces for the last 6,000 years to slow it down quite a bit, but it always goes the same rate. 23 hours, 56 minutes, 4.09 seconds to complete one rotation without change. Okay? How is that going to happen in this non-pristine world where the Earth is bombarded externally with asteroids and comets and you name it, and internally with earthquakes and volcanoes? How's it going to do that? How's it going to maintain the same rate? It can't. So you see, the God who put it together was wise. He made the universe as big as it is and with the mass that it has so that nothing can slow it down. And therefore we have our 24 hours per day, every single day. Because the guy who put it together knew what he was doing. Okay? So there's where the geocentric argument works better. It's more stable. Okay? So there's this other thing called, let's say that somebody might say, well, if the universe is rotating, and I've got 5 minutes left, if the universe is rotating and there's all kinds of celestial bodies inside of it, stars, we see them all the time, don't we? Go across the sky at night. And they all stay in the same shape, don't they? Like my favorite constellation is Orion the Hunter. It's been around for thousands of years because the Bible mentions Orion the Hunter 5,000 years ago in the book of Job. But has it changed at all? No. You can still see the stars in the same place. every single year, every single day. So what's holding those stars in place? Because, you know, if you have a washing machine, you put clothes in it, you turn it on, what's going to happen to those clothes? They're going to go to the outside. They're going to go to the rim of your washing machine, right? And what's that called? There's a special name for that in physics. It's called the centrifugal force. Okay, you've experienced that. You've got a ball on the end of a string. Wind it up. What makes that ball stay in the rim, in the circle there? And then once you let the string go, it goes in a straight line, by the way. Okay, that's called centrifugal force. You're on an amusement ride, and it's a little, like a little big washing machine, I should say, and it starts to twirl and twirl and twirl. The faster it twirls, the more you're stuck to the wall of that ride, right? That's called centrifugal force. So somebody might say, well, if there's centrifugal force in a rotating universe, aren't the stars going to go out to the rim of the universe? And so all the stars will be out there at the rim. They won't have any constellations like Orion or the Milky Way or whatever. Okay? And the answer to that would be yes. If that's all there were, yes. And the geocentric system wouldn't work. So that means what? That means there must be another force that's counteracting the centrifugal force. And you've experienced this force. You see it on Earth. When a hurricane twists in the northern hemisphere, what's making it do that? The Coriolis force. You ever hear of the Coriolis force? Well, you should, because it's twice as powerful as the centrifugal force. Twice. Okay? Where else have you seen it? Have you seen the Foucault pendulum? Anybody ever go to a museum to see the Foucault pendulum? And they claim that the reason that pendulum looks like it's turning is because the earth underneath is turning. And we say, no, because it's the universe itself that's turning. Okay? And it's the Coriolis force on that pendulum that makes it turn. Okay? Coriolis. So, the way physics turns out is there's an equation for this. Force equals ma plus centrifugal plus Coriolis plus Euler force. And we won't get into Euler right now. The two important forces there are centrifugal and Coriolis. What the Coriolis force does is just the opposite of what the centrifugal force does. The centrifugal force wants to make the stars go out, but the Coriolis force makes them go in. Okay? But not so much in that they're going to hit the center. Just enough so that they stay in their orbit. Isn't that remarkable? And you know who writes about this? Albert Einstein. Yeah, you can read about all his quotes in the book that I wrote, Geocentrism 101. Okay? So I didn't make this up. I got it from him. Okay? And the irony of this whole thing is that a few years before Albert Einstein didn't like the idea of geocentrism. Can you imagine that? No. Because he was an anti-Catholic. He was an atheist. He lived an immoral life, just like Isaac Newton. So the last thing he wanted was geocentrism. So he tried to fight geocentrism in his first theory, the theory of special relativity. We can't get into it now because I don't have enough time. As a matter of fact, my time is up. But he tried to stop geocentrism from coming down the scientific pike. And he was successful because it was smoke and mirrors. And you'll read all about that in my book, Smoke and Mirrors. And if you don't think men can do that kind of stuff, do you think men in white lab coats are these pristine individuals who live impeccable lives and will never deceive you? I got some snorkeling in Florida, I'd like to tell you. Yeah. So even he found out, however, that his special theory of relativity really didn't apply to the rest of the universe. It was just a pristine little theory that he concocted by using an equation. You know, everybody goes, ooh, oh, the equation is so wonderful. And that's why he became the most famous scientist in the world. Because he stopped people from having to believe that the sun goes around the earth. Okay? That's why he's so famous. But then 10 years later, he knew there were some problems with his special relativity theory. So he invented another theory, the general theory of relativity. And when he did that, guess what? It took him right back to the Earth-centered universe. And he said, yes, it is possible, it is feasible, it is scientific, and we have to believe it. That it's possible, not that we have to believe it. Okay? And that's where we are today. That's as far as we have come with modern science today. That they admit that geocentrism works. Okay? Thank you very much.